Okay.
Hey folks, welcome back to Ken Michaels Radio, where we talk exclusively about the Beatles here on this channel. I love all the guests that I've had here so far. Sometimes we have panel discussions. Plenty of times it's one-on-one conversations. And right now we're going to welcome Beatley Tone to the channel. Beatley has his own Beatles channel on YouTube, which has been really popular for the last 2 years. He actually was a guest on my show 2 shows back. We had a very popular program in which we talked about what Beatle fans want released today. We had a big panel of people. The Talk More Talk crowd was part of it, and Beatley was a great guest to have on that show, and now we welcome him back to Ken Michaels Radio.
Thanks very much, Ken. Thanks for asking me on. Nice to see you again.
Well, I've been hearing about your channel for quite some time now, and I'm also familiar with the fact that those of you who watch the Two Legs podcast, Beatley has been a featured guest. They do a special once a month called Stuck Inside These Four Walls, and Beatley has been part of that panel discussion. So that's something else you can catch on. But why don't you tell the folks, first of all, when you first became a Beatle fan, just to, give folks an idea of how it all started for you.
Okay. I became a Beatles fan in 1976, and so I consider myself to be a second generation Beatles fan because the band had, they'd finished by the time I discovered them. And how I became a Beatles fan was I had a friend that whose dad had brought home the Red and the Blue album, and he'd been listening to them, and he was telling me all about it on our walk. We used to walk to school daily, and he lent me the albums, and I took them home and played them, and they blew me away. It's hard to take yourself back into BB before the Beatles, and get to that place where you're hearing songs like Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane and A Day in the Life and I'm the Walrus and Hey Jude and While My Guitar Gently Weeps and all these wondrous songs, and you're hearing them for the first time and how much impact that has on you. And I always say I did hear the Red and the Blue album together, but if I'm absolutely honest, I'll say that it was the Blue album that persuaded me that I needed to hear more Beatles music than just those two albums. And then you kind of go on to try and get all the regular albums. And then when you've done that, you start on the solo album. You know how it goes, Ken.
Well, for everybody, it's different. And, I have to wonder, the people who grew up in the 60s who witnessed the Beatles as it was happening were seeing this gradual change from album to album. It's so much different for a later fan who's just throwing everything all at once.
Yeah.
These different years.
Yeah.
In the Red,
Yes.
You're going from Love Me Do to The Long and Winding Road there. And you've got all that change, going on.
Yeah, it's it's so evident from the just from the cover of the Red and Blue album. If we take the Blue album, for example, where you've got on the front cover, they're hippies, they've got long hair and beards and stuff, and on the back cover they're clean shaven mop tops. And when you first discover the Beatles, you the first thing is how did they get from there to there, and you have to go through the albums to kind of understand how they got from there to there and read all about them. And you're reading all this stuff retrospectively. The first proper album that I bought was Abbey Road. So I didn't start at the bit like first generation fans, had the luxury of going through albums chronologically and buying them as they were released, where the rest of us, just pick and choose the ones we like the cover on or something, in that order.
And while this was going on, and we should point out, of course, just by your accent,
Yeah.
that you are from London. You're,
Yes, I am. Yeah. Yeah.
were you hearing the Beatles a lot on the radio, whether it was a group or their solo music at that time? And did that influence? I mean, obviously, your growing appreciation as you learn more and more about them.
Yeah. I don't really remember the Beatles being on the radio much at the time that I discovered them. Because I used, at that time, I'd only really sort of, kind of got into pop music maybe 2 or 3 years before that, and I would be listening to chart radio in the UK. That was Radio One, BBC Radio One, and they would play the top 20, chart rundown on a Sunday evening, and every kid would listen to that show and stand by their radio with a portable cassette with a microphone against the speaker, and record the top 20 and hope that your mum didn't burst in and call you down for your dinner or whatever while you were recording. I think everyone can kind of relate to that sort of thing. So I don't really recall the hearing the Beatles on the radio. What I do very clearly remember is hearing Live and Let Die being in that chart rundown and liking that record, but not actually knowing that Paul McCartney was in the Beatles until later.
Right. Yeah. Well, I can certainly relate to what you're talking about, because I grew up writing down the charts, the top 40 charts in America from the American Top 40 with Casey Kasem, and recording the shows, on my cassette. So
I did that as well, in a little exercise book, and marking the ones that had gone up in the charts, the ones that had gone down, and how many weeks they'd been in the charts, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And what you said about Live and Let Die is so true, that there were a lot of fans that grew up in the 70s and the Beatles had the success that they had with their solo careers. And a lot of young fans didn't know that they were Beatles in the first place.
No, that's right.
We had an ongoing joke. Did you know that Paul was in a band before Wings?
Yeah.
So that alone tells you something. So what we invited Beatley to do on our show, I asked him if he had any ideas, and he thought it would be fun for him to list his top 5 underrated solo Beatle albums from John, Paul, and George. Now, to be clear, not the top 5 from each of the 3, but combined between John, Paul, and George, what he feels are the 5 most underrated albums. So before we do that, just curious to find out why you didn't want to include Ringo in the list.
Because I just think that Ringo's albums are all underrated, apart from Ringo. I think I think by doing John, Paul, and George, we can kind of get a little mix. From the 5 that I've picked, I've picked 1 John, 1 George, and 3 Paul.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I had a feeling that would be the reason. Because
I mean, obviously, because Paul's got so many more albums to choose from.
Yeah,
and there was others that I could have included as well, I think.
Yeah, where Ringo's concerned, universally everybody's praised the Ringo album. And even though on certain podcast shows, certainly Talk More Talk, there's certain Ringo albums, Time Takes Time, the Mark Hudson period, a lot of the stuff after that we've really rated highly. But to the general public, they really don't know it, unfortunately. There's only those fans that really study all the music of the solo Beatles, including Ringo. So other than the Ringo album, you can pretty much pick any. So many of Ringo's solo albums being underrated.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. So, and also I think that maybe more people maybe know these albums rather than Ringo's. Not everyone, like you say, has got everything that Ringo has put out.
Okay. So when you do this list of 5 to 1, is the number one going to be the one that you rate highest as number one, or these are just the top 5?
I hadn't actually rated them in order. I just picked 5 that I think are underrated or underappreciated.
Okay. Well, that happens to be a very popular topic on the shows that I do and in the podcast shows that I do with the others. I think many years ago when Kid O'Toole put out her book, Songs We Were Singing, and it's all about Beatles and some solo music that she feels deserves more attention, you know, hasn't
Mm,
highly enough. Really, we should re-examine some of these songs. It kind of put me on a path to doing stuff like that in all kinds of shows, underappreciated, underrated. You could apply
mm.
that to songs, you could apply that to albums. So why don't you start with one of your top 5?
Okay. So the first one that I've picked as an underrated album is that one,
Hmm.
Wings at Speed of Sound. I don't think that this album gets the love that that it deserves, because if you go through the track listing, there are enough really good songs on this album to qualify this as being a good album. And I think I just don't think it gets a lot of love from fans. I think Let 'Em In is a fantastic song. Silly Love Songs to me is like the ultimate pop single. It's just got everything. It's just got everything going. It's got fantastic melody. It's got that great bass line. It's got the horns. It's got this fantastic 3-part harmony in it. It's just got everything that you would define as needing for a perfect pop song. Silly Love Songs has got it. The Note You Never Wrote, I think, is a song that is underappreciated, written by Paul, sung by Denny, but it's got so much atmosphere about it. I love it. I love it. Beware My Love is another one, B-side of Let 'Em In, but, an absolute out and out rocker. A great song, a great song. Another one, Time to Hide, I think is a great song. I think probably Denny's best song that he wrote during the Wings period for me. And I think Warm and Beautiful is a really great ballad. I love it. So, there's a few that I've missed out there that I think are, a bit average. But all of those that I've just listed, I think are great songs. And for me, if you've got 5 great songs on an album, that makes it a decent album, more than decent album. And I don't think Wings at the Speed of Sound is very loved by fans.
Well, I just think that unfortunately, if you make a comparison, if you're going to compare it to Ben on the Run or
Yeah,
Venus and Mars, it's going to fall short. But
sure.
I think Speed of Sound is a very distinctive album because of the fact that every single member of Wings got to do a lead vocal. And I think it really showcased the band. I think it was very important for Wings to be established as a band in Paul's eyes. And so I totally agree with you. Beware My Love here in America on rock stations at the time, once things really picked up with Paul in terms of airplay on rock radio with Band on the Run, the Band on the Run album, even before that with Red Rose Speedway, a lot of album cuts got played a lot, and Beware My Love was in heavy rotation on rock stations in the United States. And just about every song on Wings at the Speed of Sound got airplay. Wino Junko got it here in the US.
Did
So
it?
yeah. And Time to Hide, when I think of Time to Hide, I think it was one of the biggest moments during the Wings Over America tour. I think the crowd really responded to that, to Denny's song. And
Yeah.
I especially love, I know you didn't mention it, but Must Do Something About It. Because I
Yeah,
think,
no, I do really like that. And it's funny because of the thing, Paul writing and other people singing, one of the complaints I think that I hear quite a lot from fans is he should have sung them himself. But Joe English does a fantastic job with his vocal on that song. And you know, if you've got the Wings at the Speed of Sound archive edition, which has got a version of Must Do Something About It with Paul singing it,
Right.
it's not as good. It's not as good. I know it's not the finished song. It's
Right.
not the finished song, but it's not. You know, I think Joe English does a fantastic job vocally on that song.
I agree. And
Mm.
one of the frustrating things about dealing with Wings is that if you grow to like the other members, you saw the potential in having Joe English in the band and Jimmy McCullough
Mm.
in the band, and you kind of wish that that lineup had continued. I could say that about the first lineup too of Wings. I loved all of them, but when you
Yeah.
vocal, um, the talents of Joe English and how strong he could sing vocally, and I've heard a lot of his solo albums. He's really very strong vocalist. He would have added so much more here and there with a song on each Wings album with
Mm. Is this your favorite lineup with Jimmy and Joe, or do you prefer it with Denny and Henry?
it's so tough because I love all the three major ones for different reasons. But and the more that these archival box sets come out, I love Denny Seiwell's drumming now more than I ever have. I think it really
Mm.
shines, and these box sets help to bring it out. But you know, you have to admit that at the time in '76 that Paul was at his peak with a band that they were really cooking on all cylinders with this lineup.
Mm.
But if he had stayed with the first one more, or if he stayed with any of these lineups, look, I love Lawrence Juber as a guitarist. He's a phenomenal
Mm.
guitarist. And Steve Holley, I love as a
Mm.
drummer.
Mm.
I like all of them. It's really tough to pick your favorite. But when you consider how special this time was, where Paul was really at the top of his game, 76 was such a big year in terms of sales, hit records, the build up from Band on the Run, or even really Red Rose Speedway, all the way up to Speed of Sound. And it was such a special time that in a way will kind of color your judgment and make you think this was the best lineup. But they're all really good musicians, and the longer that the musicians stay together, the better the band's going to be. You know,
Mm.
is it your
Uh,
favorite lineup?
this is my favorite lineup with Jimmy McCulloch and Joe English. I think the other thing about this album was the speed that it was recorded, because they kicked off the world tour, and then they stopped up, after I think it was, they go to Australia? They did UK, and then they went to Australia, and then they came back to the UK, recorded this in about a 4-week period, and then they were off again on the tour. So they had a very small window.
Right.
Um, and I guess I guess they wanted it, the second leg of the tour, they wanted to include songs, from this album. The first leg, didn't have that side 5 that we know
Right.
on Wings Over America, I guess.
One of the great things about that tour is that the material from Band on the Run, Venus and Mars, Speed of Sound worked so well as live songs.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
some of my favorite recordings of those songs are the live performances over the studio versions. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Beware My Love is killer live.
Yeah, it is.
Silly
It
Love
is.
is great live. So, all right. So, what would be your next?
Okay, so the next one, maybe a surprise. I don't know, but I've gone for Double Fantasy.
You think
I
it's
think. Sorry.
think it's underrated?
I think it is. I think it is, because I think it's underrated, possibly because of the number of Yoko songs. But the thing that I hear about this album is that John had lost his edge. He'd lost his edge, and he was settled into domesticity, and bringing up the baby and baking bread, and he'd lost his edginess.
Hmm.
But there's a couple of songs on this album, Watching the Wheels and I'm Losing You, I think are as good as anything he ever wrote in his career. You've got great singles, just like Starting Over and Woman, both both posthumous number ones in the UK. But I also really like Yoko's songs on this album, or most of them. Everything on side one is just so edgy and new wavy, and it kind of, it's very obvious that she had been paying attention to the new wave scene that was going on in the late 70s, much more than John had, in fact. And her songs on side one, Kiss Kiss Kiss, Give Me Something, and what was the other one, I'm Moving On, all fantastic, I think, all fantastic. And Every Man Has a Woman Who Loves Him, fantastic as well. So I think that the quality of this album kind of got lost in the events that surrounded it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the album was slipping down the charts when that happened, and then of course the sales went through the roof. You couldn't find one for Love Nor Money in the UK. I don't know what it was like in America, but you couldn't find any John Lennon albums in the shops leading up to Christmas 1980. That you couldn't find any John Lennon records in the shops. They were all sold out. So I just think that this album deserves more credit than it gets.
Okay, that's well put. Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Although I would say that where Yoko is concerned, a lot of the stuff that she did in the early 70s, you could say, was punk. It's not like
definitely. She was probably the first ever punk rocker. I mean, the stuff that she was doing was very similar to the stuff that Susie of the Banshees were doing here. And Patti Smith, people like that.
Lena Lovitch,
yeah.
Well, you always hear about the B-52s,
Yes, yeah.
Hey, they're doing you there, Yoko.
Yeah.
I especially appreciate what you said about watching The Wheels, because I think that's one of the greatest songs he's ever written. I just think there's an enormous talent that you have if you can sum up the last 5 years of your life in 3 verses and a chorus. Precisely, his outlook on life, being away from the public spotlight. And Woman, to me, is my favorite solo song of his. Very Beatley.
It is. It is. And I think that one of the songs that is least appreciated is Clean Up Time, which I think is a great song. It's a great subject matter, and I always felt that song could have fitted absolutely perfectly on Walls and Bridges. It would have suited that album, I think. Down there, it had that same sort of feel. But
Walls and Bridges, a lot of horns on it. The album. So Clean Up Time could have fit there along with, alongside What You Got, a song like
Yeah.
So
so I'm giving some love to Double Fantasy, I think.
And Yoko's stuff is really strong, but for the people that don't really care for Yoko, and you could say that about Milk and Honey and Sometime in New York City, for a lot of those fans, they're going to rate that album lower, unfortunately, regardless of how good her material is.
Yeah, I mean that is always going to be the case, though. Sometimes people don't want to listen.
This is so.
and that's their choice.
Okay.
But I think her songs, particularly on side one, are really, really strong.
Yeah. And also, I must say, I love the production from Jack Douglas.
Yeah, it's good. it's very 1980s, but it's a great sounding album. And incidentally, I think that Yoko's songs written for that were used on Milk and Honey are nowhere near as strong as the ones on this album.
I'd agree with you there.
Because I don't think they were recorded at the time when John was around. I think they were recorded after with and not using the double fantasy musicians, which was odd, I thought, because they're kind of companion pieces. I'm not sure why she didn't use the double fantasy musicians on that for her songs.
Do you think the songs on Double Fantasy work as a dialogue as it was intended?
Yeah, I think it does. I think like I think they're you know not perfectly, but there's definitely you know, questions and answers, I think, there between the two songs, especially things like you know, great example of that is maybe I'm moving on, and I'm losing you, I think.
Yeah, definitely works there.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's move on to the next album.
Okay, the next one I've gone for is Wildlife. Wildlife.
Okay.
Not really, you know, that popular amongst fans. Again, sort of maybe suffers from being recorded quickly, or does it benefit from being recorded quickly? Because it took me a long time to really appreciate this album, I think, and I think it's definitely a grower, and you know, I think maybe not enough people gave it at the time when it came out. Maybe not enough people gave it the time to grow. You know, I mean, yeah, I know it's a brave move to start off the first song on the first album by a new band with something like Mumbo. But it's great. I love that sort of, you know, that freak out. You know, you know, it's hard rock, it's nonsense lyrics, but I don't care. I just like it. I just like it. And that's it. Bit bop, you know, very simplistic lyrics, but it's just got a great feel to it. Got a great feel to it. I think the actual track Wildlife has got one of Paul's best ever vocals on it. You know, he is just absolutely hammering it on that track. Is, you know, great. Some People Never Know, I really like, and I'm Your Singer, I really like that as well, with the two voices. And Dear Friend is a fantastic song, and Tomorrow Is the second side is probably stronger, but you know, I just really like this as an album. I think it works as an album. It hangs together as an album. Yeah, I think it deserves more credit.
Do you think the fact that I've pointed this out many times in the podcast shows that the archival box sets that have come out have really helped people to appreciate, especially the early McCartney stuff?
Yeah, yeah,
You see all the love now for Ram more than ever before, and
yeah,
the DIY albums. And I do believe that Wildlife and Red Rose Speedway benefited quite a lot from the archival box sets, and people, you know, really liking that pure organic sound that Paul had in the early 70s, even, you know, pre-Band on the Run, we're talking. So
yeah,
yeah, I definitely think that there's been that change in attitude, which I'm very happy about with McCartney.
yeah. And I mean, the archive box for Wildlife was excellent. And you know, there's plenty of extra music on it, which, you know, some of those archive releases are very stingy in what we get as bonus audio. But Wildlife was a good one, as was Red Rose Speedway. And you know, though I think that that you definitely agree that the archive has definitely given things like Ram and Wildlife and Red Rose Speedway as well, and to some extent Flowers in the Dirt as well. The ones that where he gave us lots of extra audio. I think it just helps. I always think that the evolution mixes on the John Lennon Ultimate Mixes box sets are absolutely fantastic, where you can hear the progression of a song getting from here to there, and it's the same with some of the archive releases where you hear demos or you hear outtakes, and it kind of helps build a picture, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if Paul has been influenced by the way that John's box sets have come out, but when you have a box set like Flaming Pie, where you
Yeah,
got early takes of the songs on there, it's kind of similar to the
yeah,
evolution mixes. So yeah, I kind of wish that maybe he should start doing it all over from Band on the Run on and use that kind of a
yeah. I hope he has been influenced by it, because if the archive series isn't dead, then that bodes well for the future releases. If he has been influenced by what the Lennon camp has done.
yeah. You said something rather interesting when you first started talking about Wildlife, that maybe people don't look highly on it because it was rushed, it was recorded so quickly. But then you were kind of questioning maybe that was a benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think it is. Um, because it's got a very live feel. There's not like tons and tons of overdubs on it, and I, you know, I think sometimes not not necessarily just with this album, and not necessarily with the Beatles, but sometimes, or Beatles solo or whatever. But for any artist, sometimes the thing that makes an album enjoyable is the feel, the feel of it. And this is one of those albums that has definitely got a feel. It doesn't, it is 8 separate tracks, but it kind of feels together. They all feel as if they're all part of the same family, if you like.
Right.
um and I think that albums that have got a feel always benefit from it, even if the songs aren't as strong as maybe strong songs on other albums that artist has done. Sometimes the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts.
Mm. I would definitely agree with you on that. I mean, there are some fans that prefer when Paul is more spontaneous and does songs in a few takes. Uh,
Yeah.
and there are the albums where it's clear that he's labored on the songs, and that benefits. And for some people, they might prefer if he didn't spend so much time working over
Mm,
the same songs. I mean, Tug of
mm,
War has got to be an album that he really labored on, and
yeah.
that's one of his best albums. But some people might like the looseness of a Wildlife, you know, or
Yeah.
um, the
I
Russian album. There are some albums that maybe Driving Rain. Driving Rain has a feel to it that it's like a live band that's
mm,
there's spontaneity in the tracks, and yet there's some polish too at the same time.
definitely. Definitely.
But Wildlife, definitely an excellent choice.
Yeah, I think I hope people do, you know, get to appreciate it, because what they say. Sometimes there's gold in them hills if you look hard enough. Do you know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. It's just an album that it took me time. It took me time to love it, but once I loved it, I loved it, and that was it.
I know around the time when I first experienced Wildlife, I immediately was drawn to Love Is Strange. I just thought
Yeah,
that was an incredible arrangement. And
yeah,
and of course Tomorrow, which really should have
mm,
been a single, had all the earmarks of a commercial hit right there. And
mm,
but as you listen to the album more through the years, then you really start to appreciate the other tracks. Some People Never Know is absolutely gorgeous.
Mm.
It really is fantastic.
Yeah. I think if there's one thing that might put people off, might be the length of some of the tracks. Some of the tracks may be a little bit overly long, with not enough variation in that length. So it becomes a little bit same. You know, you sometimes less is more in, you know, in some respects. I think maybe, I mean, I love Some People Never Know, but that is one of those songs that kind of maybe goes on a little bit too long. Could do with a little bit of a trim, and maybe Wildlife, the title track, could do with that as well. But I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. I love the album. I love the album.
It's really debatable about some of those tracks, but Some People Never Know, I love the part where there's just harmony.
Yeah.
There normally would be vocals and lyrics there.
Yeah, and is that the bit where you can hear Paul's voice, but he's singing off mic. You can hear him singing the chorus or the verse or whatever it is, but it's off mic, so it's kind of in the distance.
Right.
Yeah,
I like that effect too.
Yeah.
All right, these are all great choices. We got two more left.
Okay, so the next one, Dark Horse.
Okay.
I'm a bit biased about this album, and I'm a bit precious about it, actually, but because it was the first solo album I ever bought by any of them, and I can't remember why, but it was probably cheap. it was probably cheap because I didn't know anything about the album when I bought it, and I got it home, and this is another one that I think that takes time. You got to spend time with it. But this seems to be pretty much universally hated by fans, but not by me. I really like it. I really like this album, and I go back to that sort of thing. If it's got a certain number of tracks on the album that are really good, then it's a good album. It's got some weaker moments. I think people tend to not like this, maybe because of what George was going through with his voice at that particular time. But it's not evident. That's not evident on all the tracks on the album. I think it's it's prevalent on Simply Shady and the title track Dark Horse. But they are two of my favorite songs on the album. And I'm not a big fan of instrumentals, but I think that Harry's on Tour, I think that's it's a great song. I think that was the song that he opened up the US tour with in 1974, and it's absolutely perfect for that. Simply Shady, as I say, I've always loved. Great lyrics, not without humor, which George is often, when he was going through this sort of being a little bit preachy, quite often he was accused of being without humor, but I don't think that's the case here. So Sad is a beautiful song, I think. Ding Dong is just fun. It's just, you don't get hung up about it. It's just it's just a fun song. Far East Man, written with Ron Wood, is a really great song as well. So those are the highlights for me. I'm not sure if I'm alone, but I also really like the arrangement of Bye Bye Love on this album, with the extra verse where he is clearly showing a sense of humor. There he's showing a sense of humor in the first part of it, and a little bit angry in the second part of his added verse. But it is what it is. But I do really like that arrangement. The songs that I haven't mentioned, off the top of my head. Maya Love, I think, is okay. It's not one of my favorites on the album. And the Jay Krishna at the end. Again, I think that's an okay song. It's, it's it's a little bit repetitive, I suppose. But I'm just trying to yeah. So I think that there are enough really good songs on this album. Simply Shady, So Sad, Far East Man, Dark Horse being my top picks from this album. That's enough to make it a good album. Say it was the first Beatles solo album that I bought, and I didn't stop there, so it must have had something going for it. And it's an album that I really like. I mean, this is I much prefer this to Extra Texture. Extra Texture is an album that I have never been able to find a way to love, unfortunately. But Dark Horse is great to me. I love it.
Well, I applaud you for picking this album. I love Dark Horse a lot. Based upon, and I tend to remember what people say in the podcast shows that I'm on. But when you look at George's solo career, if you want to start with All Things Must Pass, I know you had Wonderwall music and electronic sound, but if you go from All Things Must Pass on, he's on such a high with All Things Must Pass, living in the material world, maintaining it, still has a #1 album there. And then to a lot of fans, it dips right after that with Dark Horse and Extra Texture, picks itself up with 33 1/3, George Harrison, and then drops down a bit with Somewhere in England and Gone Troppo. So Dark Horse does have some really tremendous songs on it. And I don't mind instrumentals at all to kick off an album. It was a great song to play live. It was, very ideal, very live, for his tour. And So Sad to me is an absolute gem. And you're the only person I think that I've spoken to that actually likes Bye Bye Love other than me. I like
There you go.
Nothing like what the Everly Brothers did.
No, but that's that in some ways that's the beauty of it. It's a completely different arrangement, and it's an interesting arrangement. You got to remember that George picked crack musicians for this album. Pretty much all his solo albums, to be fair. But there are fantastic musicians on this album, and they can do fantastic things. And I really like that arrangement, and like you say, hardly anyone does, but I do.
Well, George has a style that's all his own. I like when he covers other artists' material. He'll do it differently than most people would. And I actually truly love It Is He, Jai Shri Krishna. I like a lot of those chant-like songs, like My Sweet Lord. And I love the whole arrangement with the flutes that are added in there. I love it. I loved his spiritual stuff. And it's a lot of terrific stuff. Dark Horse really is a terrific song to me.
It is. It is.
Yeah. I'm glad that you picked that one.
Yeah. And it's good that we've got the live version of it from the Japan album, so we can hear that song with his voice at his best as well. No, it's a great song.
It's a good thing we had that tour period, because there's a lot of songs that we got live that we never would have had otherwise.
Fantastic. And he did one show in the UK, his only solo show, where he did a full set at the Royal Albert Hall in 1992, and I got tickets to see it. So I've seen George live. It's the only full show he's ever done in the UK. So delighted to have been able to see him live.
Lucky you.
And Ringo came on for the encore as well. and they did While My Guitar and Roll Over Beethoven as an encore.
Okay,
Mm.
that's great. Yeah, I got to see George in '74, one show, my only time ever seeing.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I
How old were you then?
would have been 15.
Perfect.
So
Perfect time. Yeah.
I do remember hearing that, his voice was hoarse and I had trouble hearing him from where I was sitting when he was
Yeah.
live. The band was killer. Billy Preston was the life of the show. If you've ever seen
Yeah.
him live, he not only is great at the keyboards, but he dances around the stage when he
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, it was a fantastic band, but sometimes I really struggled to hear George sing. So
Yeah.
I do hope
That's
something does come out from that tour where they can pick the best performances, from the different shows, depending upon what was professionally recorded.
yeah. That would be really great. Did you see him at Madison Square Gardens?
Didn't
No.
you Bangladesh? No. Oh, you mean the '74 tour? No.
74.
I saw him at the Nassau Coliseum in Long
Oh,
Island.
okay. Okay.
I lived on Long Island at the time, and if we'd had only known that that
Hmm.
was only tour until 1991,
Yeah.
yeah, I would have tried to see more shows. You just didn't think in those terms. You always think, well, another year or 2 years will come around again.
Yeah. But it's not so easy when you're 15, to find the money to go to, multiple shows.
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I do now.
Yeah.
Every time Ringo tours, if he's in my area, 2 shows.
Yeah.
I've done more than two. Try to do two with Paul if I can, but got to stretch the money somehow.
Yeah. Did you get to see the Got Back tour?
um, but yeah, every tour that Paul has done in the States, I've
Yeah.
seen.
Okay.
So I've been really spoiled in that regard. But I've loved all of his shows, but nothing will ever be as special to me as the Wings Over America tour.
No, I bet. I'd have loved to have gone to
Yeah,
that.
not just because it was the first time that I saw Paul, but just the fact that, nothing against the Beatles catalog, but he wasn't relying on the Beatles catalog then.
No.
He only did 5 Beatles songs, and he didn't have to do, any more than that, because he was really so popular on the charts back then. You couldn't get any hotter than Paul was at the time. And I was just happy to see him do all the solo material and to see other members do their own songs. I was happy to
Yeah.
see McCulloch do Madison Jar, you know. He made it on his own with another band that a lot of people were not only listening to because it was Paul in the band, but they were starting to get into Denny Lane songs and Jimmy songs. So you know, it was a very high moment for me to see him then in '76. It's my favorite concert from any artist, not just Paul.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw the first time that I saw him was on the Back to the Egg tour, the 1979 UK tour. I
Hmm.
saw 3 dates on the main tour and the concert for Kampuchea as well. So I was very lucky getting to those shows. But of course, he didn't do many Beatles songs on that tour either.
He started to do a little bit more, with
Yeah,
Got to Get You Into My Life and Fool on the Hill, Let It Be for the first time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But the downside of that, he didn't do anything from Venus and Mars. He didn't do anything from Venus and Mars on that tour. I think there was 3 songs from McCartney, one,
Hmm.
one from McCartney 2, which wasn't out yet, but he did Coming Up,
Yeah.
um, and nothing from Ram, nothing from Wildlife, nothing from Red Rose Speedway. Um, he did Band on the Run and No Words, I think, if I remember rightly. Don't think he did Jet on that tour. Cook of the House we got from Speed of Sound.
Yeah. Hey, and
Um,
they're all special in their own way, all these tours.
yeah,
Had the Back to the Egg material in there was nice.
yeah. I mean, the Back to the Egg material was obviously, you know, quite prevalent in the set list, and he's never gone back to any of those songs
Mm.
uh, in subsequent tours.
And the only song
So,
sound he did was I've Had Enough.
yeah, yeah,
So that's a shame.
yeah. I mean, that's the only song he's ever played from London Town live, I guess.
Yeah, with a little luck. What a shame he's never done that live.
Yeah, I know, crazy.
Anyway, your final album.
My final album is Driving Rain.
Okay.
I didn't say anything when you mentioned it earlier because I thought I'd save it for now. But Driving Rain, yeah, another one. I think, you know, it's very underrated, and I don't think people are listening properly because, you know, there are so many great songs on it, and I just I'm not. No, I do understand. I do understand why people you know, a lot of people are not happy with this album. Again, this album took me a long time to love, but only because I didn't like play it and play it and play it and play it. And, you know, all those times that I was playing it, I still didn't like it. I played it, you know, maybe 2 or 3 times when it came out and thought I didn't like it. So didn't go back to it for years. And then when I did go back to it, it's like, hang on a minute, this is really good. And it could have been about 10 years. It could have been the slowest burning album ever. Could have taken me 10 years to love it. But I think it's a great album. There's loads of great stuff on it. And you know, I think about some of the, I mean, it's a long album. It's a long album. It's a double album. If if you got it on vinyl, it's a double album. And but there are songs on this that I think, like things like Riding to Japer, Rinse the Raindrops. Now, Electric Arguments is an album that is well loved by Paul's fans. Now, if those two tracks had been on Electric Arguments, people would have loved them. I'm sure they would. Those are the two sort of experimental tracks on this album. Maybe you know, Spinning on Axis a little bit as well. Has got a little bit of that. Now, if that had been on Electric Arguments, I'm sure people would have loved them, because that's an album that people, you know, tend to love. I think it's got some great songs on it. Lonely Road is a fantastic opener, really good, really strong opener. I think maybe the two of the weaker songs on this album, maybe the singles, From a Lover to a Friend, and Your Loving Flame, are a little bit uninteresting, I think, as songs. But you know, he tackles some interesting topics, like you know, She's Given Up Talking is it's an interesting topic. It's some of the lyrics are a little bit too easy, I think, on that song, but it's an interesting topic about a kid that, you know, is obviously traumatized, that she stops talking when she goes to school, but as soon as she's out of that environment, whatever's happening to her in that environment, whether it's bullying or whatever, which is a subject that Paul's gone back to, you know, like, you know, later on as well. You know, she's like that, you know, she's yak yak yak, and you know, so that's an interesting thing. You know, Tiny Bubble, I think, is a good track. I Do is a good track. Magic is a good track. Your Way is a good track. Heather is a good track. Maybe it's the association with Heather Mills that people don't like. But I think this album is really underappreciated. I think if people were to give it, I know that you did a show on Talk More Talk, about, you did a re-listen of it, didn't you?
Yep.
And I can't remember what the outcome was, whether Joe still hated it, but you know, I think I think there's a lot to love on this album.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And this was an album that was like a slow burner for me. The ones that I loved instantly. But there are
Mm,
songs that took a while to grow on me. But I sometimes see a similarity between Driving Rain and Press to Play. In some way,
mm,
I look at, Stranglehold and Lonely Road, great opening rockers, just like that. The third
mm,
on each. Um, you got She's Given Up Talking and Talk More Talk. These experimental electronic sound. Uh,
yeah,
um, and you hit the nail on the head about it being a very long album. Once you add everything, including Freedom, uh,
mm,
it's quite a lot of music there. But I love the variety of the music. I've always thought Spinning on an Axis is such a cool track. It's just
mm,
letting loose with his vocals and just seeing
mm,
what he feels like. You know, Your Way has that country feel to it, kind of like Heart of the Country. I Do was a very simple ballad, but very effective. Um,
mm.
there's so much good stuff throughout, and Heather is well, it's mainly an instrumental with only one verse in it.
Yeah, yeah. About You, where he's using that very throaty vocal that I love. I love it when he sings it with that voice. I do. I think this album has got a lot of merit, and uh, I wish people would appreciate it more. I did think I almost it's funny you should say that the comparison with Press to Play, because I almost picked Press to Play, but I felt that Driving Rain needed needed the love more. I think more people have come round to Press to Play more recently, but I'm not sure if that shift has happened yet for Driving Rain. The title track, I hate songs that have counting in them.
Mhm.
It's just one of my things. I think the what's it called? The Inchworm on
Right.
Kisses on the Bomb is one. I think it's the worst song he's ever done. I think, but I can't bear it. But um, there's something about the song Driving Rain, which has got counting in it, which normally I don't like, but somehow it gets away with it on that song. I'm not sure why. Maybe being able to see, he did it live on the 2003 tour that we had here, that I saw him. He only did two songs from this album, Lonely Road and Driving Rain. Um, but yeah, you know, I like this album, and this, it's not a perfect album, and when you the problem is that when you try and rank it within all of his other albums, then it's not going to be near the top. Let's be realistic, because it's competing with a lot of really really good albums, but for me it's not going to be near the bottom either, because there are other albums that I'd put lower than this. I haven't actually been brave enough to tackle a Paul McCartney solo album ranking video. Yeah, it's on my list. I will do it at some point, but it's a big task. And when I do it, this will probably be probably around sort of the lower middle, I would say, roughly.
Yeah, I haven't done a list myself for this channel.
Mm,
I know a lot of people have done it. Maybe at some point I'll do the same. But part of the joy in openly talking about all this music is that, yeah, and I've said this so many times, that opinions can change over the years. Certain
mm,
that you didn't think that highly of when it first came out, you could listen to 10 years later, 20 years later, and think, this is a lot better than I realized it was.
yeah.
I say that a lot about George Harrison's music, because so much of what he's written about is deeply personal, very spiritual stuff that
Mm,
you probably couldn't understand when you were younger. and you can relate to it more. You know, even going back to the Beatle days, I think of Within You, Without You, which is a song that, as a little kid, was way over my head.
Yeah, yeah.
Most people's heads. I think of that as one of the most brilliant recordings the Beatles made. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic song. I mean, it sticks out on that album like a sore thumb, but kind of in a good way. And you know that it is, out of all the songs on Pepper, that was the one that took me, the most time to love. But I do love it. It's fantastic. It is a fantastic song.
But in every artist catalog, especially an artist that has a deep catalog, a lot of albums, there's always going to be some albums along the way that you didn't take enough time to really listen to and appreciate.
Yeah.
You go back to it later on and you realize that it's better than you thought it was. So you know, everyone's got different opinions, and opinions can revolve around the strength of the songs. A lot of fans care a lot about the production of the album. Uh,
Mm.
and everyone has their own criteria as to why they like certain music, and that's why it's fun to talk about it and hear different opinions, like on this channel and your channel and all the other podcast shows. So these were all excellent choices, Beatley.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we go, just fill people in, if they're not familiar with your channel, of some of the things that you've done recently. I know that you did a show on, and a lot of people have done this, whittling down the White Album to one disc. What
Yeah.
do? Which for
Yeah, and I did do that, and I was about, I was treating it like it was a game. This is a game. This is a fun thing to do. It shouldn't be such a big deal, because no one is actually taking those songs away from you, and you can't hear them again. It's like, I think, I mean, this is something that I have always done, is when I get to know an album, I always pick myself a favorite track from the album. And basically, all I was asking people to do was pick their favorite 15 tracks. That's it. They're not losing them forever. They can go and listen to them anytime they like. But if they were to pick their 15 tracks and put their favorite 15 tracks, put them on one album, what would it sound like? And people were very I'm not doing this. I can't do this. It's impossible. I don't want to lose any. But you're not going to lose it. It's just a game. It's okay. It's okay. It'll be all right. Revolution 9 will still be there in the morning. It's okay. And but I was quite surprised at how many people were almost offended at the thought of actually whittling down the White Album to 15 songs. And it was just a game. It's just a game. And I thought it would be interesting if people on my channel, did that, submitted their 15 tracks, if they could be bothered to type out the titles in the comments, and then I could come back a month later and say, right, well, I can consolidate all the results and say, right, for this channel, this is what the viewers of this channel think are the top 15 songs on the White Album. And that was it. That was it, really. So yeah, we did that, and I enjoyed whittling them down. But to me, the White Album to me is my favorite album of all time by anyone, period. So the White Album, the thing I always say about the White Album is it's perfect in its imperfection. If you take the tracks on that album, are they the 30 best songs the Beatles ever did? No way are they. But when you put them all together, you've got this huge collection of the most eclectic mix of songs that they ever did. And for that alone, it's fantastic. Even if Wild Honey Pie is a throwaway, I still love it, and I wouldn't be without it. It didn't make my top 15 because of the strength of the other songs, but I still love it. It's quirky, and it's different, and it's interesting. So So yeah, so we did that on the channel, and are you asking me other things that I do on the channel, or do you just want to speak about that?
Well, I just wanted to ask you, when it came to picking your 15 songs from the White Album, were you also thinking of how they segged together?
Yeah, I was, I was, I was trying to get them into something that flowed in the right way. So I kind of, I started off the album with a rocker. I picked Everybody's Got Something Tied Except for Me and My Monkeys, my opening track, and yeah. So I was trying to get it to flow. I ended the album with Happiness Is a Warm Gun, because I like that sort of combination of the kick drum and the floor tom tom that ends that song. I thought that was a good, a good final moment for the album. I mean, it works very well at the end of side one on the Real White Album. So yeah, I was thinking about sequencing and how the track listing would hang together. But you know what? The thing about the White Album is that because there are so many different genres, so many different styles on that album, it's very difficult to, well, I say it's very difficult. Maybe it's not difficult at all because of that. You can hang them together pretty much any way you like, because that is pretty much how it is sequenced on the actual White Album, and it would still hang together because you've not got so many songs that are in the same genre that kind of flow together. And maybe the best way to do it is you have a rocker, and you follow that with an acoustic ballad, and then maybe you go for something a bit mid-tempo song, then you go for some a country song or something like that, and it still works because it's the White Album.
Right. I don't know how you or any fan couldn't put Back in the USSR as the first song. How can you not?
It didn't even make my top 15.
Wow.
Which was, I think I might have been the only one that didn't have it in their top 15. But yeah, I mean, I just thought there were 15 songs better than that on it. I thought it's a great song. It's a great song, but maybe there's always that thing about overhearing songs. If if you hear them too often, they lose their magic a little bit. Or some songs do, and that was one for me that would have been lower down. If I was ranking all the songs on the White Album, it would have been maybe it would have been number 18 or something like that. So it missed out on my top 15, but not by much.
Yeah. I did watch the one you did on the bootleg series, volume
Oh
1.
yeah.
Reviewed, you went through every track that was on there. So I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, I'm just about to record the second part of that, actually.
Hmm.
It's coming up.
What shows have proven to be like the most popular?
People always love any news items,
Hmm.
any news of albums coming out. I always do at the end of the, or I say always, I've only been doing it 2 years, but the 2 years that I've done it, sort of around November time, I do a video where I try and predict what's gonna come out Beatles wise the following year, and those have been have had high viewing numbers.
Have you been accurate?
Good God, no. No, because you kind of it's difficult. I think on for both years. I was predicting that there would be an archive release of Back to the Egg and London Town, and it's still not here. But you try and do realistic predictions based on anniversaries and you know, mostly based on anniversaries and things like that. And you know, I wasn't wildly predicting, you know, that we would get this, that, and the other. That, you know, if I didn't think it was a realistic chance of it happening, then I didn't include it. But you know, I thought it was I thought it was reasonable that we, you know, that we would get a similar box to, you know, similar to All Things Must Pass box for Living in the Material World. What with it being its 50th anniversary this year, you know, I think I said, you know, that there would be a Ringo box. You know, the only things that that I've got right so far is the things that were pretty much nailed on, and that was that it'll be a 50th anniversary half speed master of Red Rose Speedway. You know, we pretty much knew that would happen anyway, so that wasn't, I wasn't actually being, you know, Nostradamus by predicting that. But you know, I have a go. But those sort of things that are fairly popular. I do some, you know, because my channel is new. I've never got to do the review thing of, you know, all the albums that have been before. So I've kind of been doing a you know, a random deep dive review into various albums, and I've done maybe about 10 of those. Those people quite like those. And I also did things about like how much the archive edition deluxe box sets were worth. I did one last year, and then a year later I did an updated one based on the values that they were, you know, being asked for them on the secondary market. And those videos are quite popular as well. But yeah, you know, anything to do with new releases are popular. I did when Revolver came out, I did a comparison video between Giles's remix and the 2009 remaster. The thing, you know, things that I could hear that was different, that got quite a lot of views as well. It's difficult. It's difficult to remember which ones are, you know, are the most popular. But you know, I just try and do I try not to do too much of the same thing on my channel. Mix it up a little bit. So you know, I don't do sort of review after review after review. I do a review, and then maybe, you know, 6 weeks later I'll do another one, and in between we'll have other, you know, other stuff. Just try and vary it a little bit. And I did my first ever live stream a few weeks ago, and I was quite worried about it because I wasn't that confident about the tech that was going to work, and I wasn't that confident that anyone was going to turn up, because I did it quite late, which would have did it quite late at night, which kind of suited American audiences, but I wasn't sure, you know, I wasn't sure anyone would turn up. And I had 100 people on, which was amazing. I was there for 3 hours talking to people, which was incredible. So I'm doing another one of those soon, but I'm going to do it at an earlier time, so it kind of suits the UK people this time. And I'll, you know, it's you know, with those things you can't, you know, because you got people from all over the world watching, you can't fit in with everyone's time zone, so you've got to take a punt on it and hope people turn up.
Yeah. So you're just basically answering questions about the Beatles or your feelings about the Beatles. It's just live.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I didn't really have when we went on it, I thought there would be quite a lot of talk about the you know, the Red and Blue albums coming out, but I just let people just ask, you know, people just ask whatever they wanted to ask, and you know, we chatted about it, and it was good. It was really good. It was really good fun. And that, you know, there's a lot of people that I see on, I think my people that watch my stuff. They're very loyal. I see in the comments, I kind of see the same names cropping up on it on each video, and a lot of those people came on the live stream as well. So that was really nice. Yeah, it was good. It was good.
It's a great feeling to see the same names because you know that these people are devoted.
Yeah, yeah,
It's something that we really appreciate. All the
yeah. No,
YouTube channels.
it's really important. It's really important.
Okay, well, this has been great.
Well, it's really important. If what we do is any way important, then it's really important that we've got people that that are interested in what we say.
Apparently, there's enough people out there, and they'll always be interested in the Beatles.
Yeah.
I'm just grateful that there's more and more shows out there, because it only spreads the word about how great the Beatles, their whole legacy is. So, but this has been absolutely wonderful, Beatley. Thanks for spending some time here on my channel. And
Thanks very much for having me.
we'll have to
Enjoy.
have you on again because it's endless what we can talk about with the Beatles here. But best of luck, continued luck with your channel. And
Thanks very much.
I'm going to include the link to Beatley's channel in the description box here. Please subscribe to Beatley Tone's Beatle channel. And mine too, if you haven't done so already. So thanks so much, guys, for watching. And thank you, Beatley, for being here. And we'll see you next time. Peace.
Thanks very much.